Rwanda says it has lodged a formal request for assistance from Malawi to help find 55 fugitives in connection with the 1994 genocide. Rwanda believes that some suspects, known as warlords, are hiding in Lilongwe. They are wanted in connection with the deaths of over 2,000 people. Rwanda's request comes weeks after fugitive Fulgence Kayishema was arrested in Cape Town after more than 2 decades on the run. For more on this, we're joined now by Central African Director for Human Rights Watch, Mudge, to give us some detail around this. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. The arrest of Fulgence Kayishema is being viewed as an important milestone in the search for justice for crimes committed during the 1994 Rwandan genocide. He's been evading justice since 2001. Why is his arrest important?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. The arrest of Fulgence Kayishema is important, I think, for several reasons. First and foremost, and I think most importantly, Kayishema is really considered to be the last of one of the large-scale organizers of significant massacres of ethnic Tutsi in Rwanda. In the last few years, there's been a recent spate of either arrests or confirmations of the deaths of some of these sort of masterminds who perpetrated genocide or who allegedly perpetrated genocide. And Kayishema really was the last one. So I think first and foremost, you're seeing once again an example of how justice takes some time, but justice will be served for these the most serious crimes ever committed. I think secondly, the arrest of Kayishema is significant because it does represent that South Africa, a country who has had recently a contradictory relationship with international judicial mechanisms, but now South Africa certainly was very cooperative with an international tribunal. Kayishema is now being processed through a residual mechanism of an international tribunal on Rwanda, and South Africa was very, very helpful in that regard. So I think, secondly, this demonstrates that South Africa might be leaning towards cooperation with these international courts. And thirdly, I think it's significant in that, once again, it highlights that there are some problems. Kayishema's case is supposed to be referred back to Rwanda, and while this is a great day for many people in Rwanda, especially ethnic Tutsis who might have suffered or lost loved ones from crimes that Kayishema is alleged to have perpetrated. Once again, it highlights that the judicial system in Rwanda itself still has some serious problems with regards to its ability to ensure a free and fair trial when you have a judiciary that is manipulated by the executive as it is currently in Rwanda.
Yeah. And Kayishema's arrest comes as several other people alleged to be high-level planners of the genocide in Rwanda have either been arrested or perhaps confirmed dead. Let's, for instance, look at Felicien Kabuga. A UN court has ruled that he's now unfit to stand trial and calling for an alternative legal procedure that would end in a conviction. What's your take on that?
Yeah, this news just broke, and my first reaction is this is unbelievably regrettable. Felicien Kabuga really was the financier, the person who got the money together to pay for a lot of the mechanisms of genocide. He sponsored a radio station that was used to coordinate killings across Rwanda in 1994. And he also paid for it's just terrible. He paid for many of the machetes that were used by the Interahamwe militias, these extremist Hutu militias, to kill ethnic Tutsis. So my first reaction is this is a miscarriage of justice towards the victims. And one has to wonder, as a first reaction, is this just Felicien Kabuga, who was on the run and in hiding for so many years in France? Is this just another example of him trying to sort of get his way out of being held responsible for serious, serious crimes? So it is certainly the prerogative and the purview within the purview of the courts to ascertain if someone is mentally fit to stand trial, and we absolutely respect that process. But this must be a very, very, very bitter day for many of the people who lost loved ones in the genocide almost 30 years ago.
You also talk about the wheels of justice having moved so slowly. We know that Rwanda has now lodged a formal request for assistance from Malawi to help find 55 fugitives in connection with the 1994 genocide. Is that an indication now of how Rwanda wants to ensure that justice is served?
Well, it does, but it's complex. The problem is that Rwanda itself has demonstrated, I think most notably and most recently through a high-profile case of Paul Rusesabagina, who was famous from the Hotel Rwanda movies, ironically, which were shot in South Africa. It's demonstrated through that case that its judiciary still has quite some ways to go to demonstrate that it's free and fair. The case of Rusesabagina, and just to be clear, I'm taking no position on his presumed innocence or guilt, but the case of Rusesabagina was highly, highly problematic. He was disappeared and held incommunicado for a number of days before he was presented. There were real issues with him being allowed to freely speak with his defense counsel. His communications with his lawyer were followed and read. His daughter's telephone in the United States was allegedly hacked by the Rwandans. So there are some serious problems with Rwanda itself and its ability to ensure justice. Also, there are refugees outside of Rwanda who are not associated with the genocide, who are political opponents of a very authoritarian government in Kigali. And you see quite often that if you are an opponent of the government of Kigali, it's quite easy to merge you being opponent with you having committed genocide or you supporting genocide. So we do see people unjustly accused of perpetuating genocide or of genocide denial simply by virtue of the fact that they might be against the RPF, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, the ruling party, or the president, Paul Kagame. So while, there certainly are steps to take in ensuring justice for the genocide, it's been 30 years, but there are people out there. There's also serious concern that the sort of blanket statement of we're going after people who've committed genocide could be used to target political opponents.
Yeah. I mean, as you speak about those concerns, looking at Felician Kabuga, what I'm reading here is that the court is saying that it cannot be guaranteed his trial will be fair because he's an opposition politician. That in itself speaking volumes.
Yeah, and it's frankly, it's a sad irony. A key and principled point of ensuring justice is to enable folks to render justice in locations close to those people most affected. But unfortunately, the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, in a number of cases, has ruled that Rwanda simply doesn't have a judicial system that can give a free and fair trial. That's unfortunately as well the conclusion of Human Rights Watch on these high-profile cases. So what that does ultimately is it means that people who were most affected by these crimes cannot see justice rendered close to them. They have to watch these things unfold in tribunals very far away.
Very well. Thank you so much. Let's perhaps leave it there for now, giving us some clarity there. Central Africa Director for Human Rights Watch, Mudge, speaking about how Rwanda is trying, well, in a contradictory way, to ensure justice is served when it comes to the 1994 genocide in Rwanda.